Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Scales of Justice. I'm District Attorney Tim Cruz, and I am the District Attorney of Plymouth County. Joining me today is my special guest, Executive Director Nicole Richardi. Nicole is the Executive Director of our Plymouth County Children's Advocacy Center. She's also known as the CAC. She's worked for the Plymouth County DA's office for the last 13 years. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss the Children's Advocacy Center, how it works, and how my office utilizes the CAC to prosecute criminal cases involving children as victims. Prior to the 1990s, investigations regarding the sexual assault and the physical abuse of children were incredibly fragmented. Child victims were required to go through multiple interviews with multiple agencies. With the creation of the Children's Advocacy Center, we've been able to streamline this process to make the entire investigation less traumatic for our child victims. So my first question is, Nicole, I'm not sure how many of our viewers are familiar with that concept of the Children's Advocacy Center. So could you tell them more about what a CAC is?
As you stated, prior to the 90s, child abuse investigations were incredibly fragmented. So what would happen, for example, at a camp, let's say, a child would disclose to their camp counselor, sexual or physical abuse, and then the counselor would interview them, and then they called the camp director, who would then come in, interview the child, and then they wouldn't know what to do, so they called the police or law enforcement. So a detective might respond, interview the child. They might send the child to the Department of Children and Families for an interview, and so on and so forth. The child might end up at the hospital or multiple other agencies before they finally would arrive at the district attorney's office. Obviously, that was incredibly traumatic for kids to have to go through, to have to tell their story over and over to all different adults. It was incredibly embarrassing for them, and it also compromised criminal investigations. Now, thankfully, we have children's advocacy centers, and in fact, there are over 800 nationally because it's proven to be the most effective way to handle child abuse investigations. When they come to the CAC, everything happens at one time, under one roof, and they're only interviewed that one time, as I had mentioned before. So absolutely the most least traumatic way to move forward. And there's a CAC in every county in Massachusetts because of that reason.
Yeah, and I remember when I was going around trying to find a new location for our CAC back 10 years or so ago, trying to talk to people about how important it was to have a one-stop location here in our county, because part of my what I would talk to people about is, imagine being a 7-year-old child or a 6-year-old child, and imagine the worst, most terrible thing that's ever happened to you, and also imagine having to tell that story over again and again and again. Lots of kids disclose at school, you tell the teacher. The teacher will bring in the nurse, tell the nurse, they'll tell the nurse, they'll bring in the principal, tell the principal, they'll call the police, tell the police, then they'll take them to the hospital for a medical exam, tell the nurse, tell the doctor. And at the end of the day, these kids, and you really can't blame them, don't want to talk about it anymore. They want to put it behind them, they want to move forward, which is why your job and the CAC is so incredibly important here in our county. Now, I know that, the people that work in the system, people that are aware of the child abuse that goes on, not just in our county, but across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I think they'd be surprised at how many cases that we have just in Plymouth County alone on an annual basis. Could you tell us what that number is?
Absolutely. People are always surprised, especially when I go out and conduct trainings. People often think, especially in some of the, I hate to say it, but the more wealthy communities often think, well, that doesn't happen here, that doesn't happen in our town. And in fact, we cover all towns in the city of Brockton and Plymouth County here, and we get cases from every single town. And per year, we get about 500 referrals, and that's just in Plymouth County.
Yeah, and that's such a large number for the kids in our county, and it's in making your role and the CAC role and the mandated reporting role so incredibly important to make sure that we can protect the kids and get them as quickly as we can. So if something happened to a child in Plymouth County, what is the way that you, as either the executive director or somebody who works for you at the CAC, how would you find out about it?
Typically, we get referrals from all throughout the community. So we get the majority of our referrals from police departments, law enforcement, the Department of Children and Families. We get them from schools. We get them from hospitals. Sometimes we'll even get a concerned community member who's gotten our number or email from someplace, and we'll just call and say, hey, I have a concern about a kid. Can you help me with this? Can you tell me what to do? Or sometimes parents call us directly because they're not sure where else to turn. So we want to be that referral for people, be that resource and help people walk through this incredibly traumatic time, because people panic. They don't know what to do, and we want to be that resource for them. So the community members are trained. They know what to do. They know as soon as a child discloses, they need to file a report with the Department of Children and Families, and then give us a call so we can start coordinating the investigation right away.
Now, in Plymouth County, we're very lucky to have a good partner, a private partner. And I think that really is an unusual relationship, a private outside the state agency and a public agency like us in the DA's office. And we work with BAMZ and Tony Simonelli and the Brockton Area Multi-Service that does a tremendous job throughout Plymouth County, but they also provided us a space in Brockton, which is our main CAC, after many years of locating and doing it out of the DA's office, which really just didn't fit. But now, at Pleasant Street in Brockton, where the CAC is located, now it offers so much under that one roof. Can you tell me what services are offered to somebody once a child has either disclosed and it's gone to the police or a mandated reporter, and once you get notified of it, how does it end up at that facility?
So basically what happens is all of the first responders are trained in our community to know to give us a call after they file a report with Department of Children and Families. Our forensic interviewers are amazing. They're extensively trained to conduct non-leading, forensically sound interviews of kids, and they can really customize it, the interviews, to the child's developmental needs. So basically when the family comes to our center, they're greeted by the forensic interviewer, who sits down and explains everything to the child and family, make sure they feel really comfortable with everything that's going to happen. And then the interviewer and the child go into the interview room as a whole team watches from the observation room. The team of people is comprised of a police detective, a victim witness advocate that works for our office, an assistant district attorney that works for our office. If the Department of Children and Families is investigating, then they'll be there as well, and also a pediatric sexual assault nurse examiner. So everybody watches as the interviewer speaks with the child, and then afterwards the family is able to come up, meet with the whole team at one time in one place, ask any questions that they have, get the resources that they need, and then they can leave knowing that everybody's on the same page and it's a coordinated response.
And it's certainly, we're much more successful in this fashion than we were in the old way of a child repeating his story his or her story over and over again.
Absolutely.
With as you said, we have trained forensic examiners, people who go to school to learn how to deal with these children as they are in really the weakest, most vulnerable time of their lives. And like I said earlier, what an incredibly terrible situation they're going through, and how important it is to have people there that are understanding people, that are compassionate to them, and can try to do a couple things at once, including getting the child the services that they may need, but also making sure, if possible, if the child can disclose, to make sure that we can prosecute the people who are hurting them. Now, I think one thing I think that most people may not realize is that many times the offending person is somebody who knows the child.
Absolutely.
How often is that?
It's about, believe it or not, 90% of the time, child predators are people that are known to the child or to the family. They're trusted individuals. Gone are the days where we're talking about a boogeyman jumping out from the bushes. Stranger danger is still important to talk to kids about, but really that issue is with known, people that are known to the family and people that are really well trusted. And these people put themselves in places that afford them access to kids. So we can be talking about coaches, school personnel, really anywhere where someone has access to children. And furthermore, they will try to spend increased time with kids, really gain their trust, and then lavish attention on them, anything to make the kids feel special. So these are really obviously dangerous people that we're talking about here.
It's more, once again, of the grooming that we see of from child predators who are trying to lure kids in, whether it be a stranger situation perhaps, which maybe began on the internet.
Right, exactly.
Because now all the kids unfortunately are on the media. They're all better than we are with the computers, and they're all talking to people. And that's why it's also so important to teach our kids about internet safety, making sure that they never should give out information, divulge that, talk to individuals on the computer that they don't know, and give out information like where they live, where they play sports, things like that. And people need to really make sure that they watch their kids and their Facebook and things that they may be on, which, by the way, you shouldn't have a Facebook until you're at least 13, according to Facebook. But some would say maybe even older. But it's so important for the police to also make a determination at the outset whether or not the offending person is one of the family members.
Right, absolutely.
Because your responsibility is to make sure we remove that child with DCF from that dangerous situation.
Right.
And then provide services to maybe other family members and the child itself. Can you describe what services are offered to the family members and to the child?
Absolutely. The two additional services we have, in addition to what I've already spoken about, is we have a mental health consultant and a pediatric sexual assault nurse examiner that also work at the CAC that are available at the time. Again, the one-stop model, one day, come in, get everything done at once, or get the services they need. What happens with the mental health consultant is she will meet with the family, non-offending family members, while the child is being interviewed. They can discuss what mental health services look like and find out if the family is wanting to move forward with those services. If they do, then the mental health consultant will refer them somewhere out in the community that's close to the family, so they're not having to drive to Brockton every time they need services. So they'll actually make that link with a provider for the family, and that's available to all non-offending family members, because unfortunately we know that this crime affects all of the family. So siblings are eligible, parents are certainly eligible, and we encourage parents to get help because this is very traumatic. We also have a nurse that sits in on our SANE interviews, and the family can talk to her afterwards, or the child, or both, and get any services that they need. They can do anything from just asking medical questions, questions about their body. Kids have an awful lot of questions about that, all the way up to getting an exam on site. We actually have a medical suite there. Everything is child-friendly. Everything is geared toward making everything as least traumatic as possible for the kids. So those are two invaluable services that we have that's offered to everyone that comes to our center, and everything is free.
Well, you guys are doing a great job there, and just, you know, I know that we talked a little bit about it, but what are some other ways that you know of that we can prevent child abuse and sex offenders from harming our kids?
Parents should always be aware of who their kids are spending time with, other adults, other kids. They should try to limit one-on-one time with adults as much as possible. Parents should be familiar with the organizations that their kids are interacting with and know that those organizations have appropriate reporting policies, and also that they're screening all of their employees. As you already mentioned, parents should be monitoring their children's activities on the internet, because we know that 1 in 5 kids are sexually solicited while on the internet. And those are 2010 numbers, so I'm sure more up-to-date numbers, it's even more than that. It's a scary world that we live in. And parents should also let kids know that they can talk to them about any interactions with any other kids or adults that make them feel uncomfortable.
What are some of the behaviors that a child predator that the kids also need to be aware of? What do they do? What is that grooming word that we hear about from the FBI? In other words, how do they lure them in and gain their trust? And that's really what it is. I mean, it's been my experience that it's not unusual for one of these individuals to try to get the child's trust, whether they give them food, whether they give them money, whether they give them something, and try to be their friend per se. And that we as parents need to make sure that our kids understand that their friends should be their same age, more or less. They should not be grown adult men.
Exactly. Yep. And I think a lot of kids might think, again, if the parents are really focusing in on the creepy stranger, that's easy to avoid, or relatively easy to avoid, I think. But it's when it's your neighbor, friendly, for example, Tom, that lives next door, that's not really the person that you're worrying about. But unfortunately, and not that you should walk around being overly cautious about everyone, but just read kids' cues. If they seem uncomfortable, ask them why. If something with the adult seems a little off to you, keep an eye on that. Don't second guess yourself. Really go with your gut. I think a lot of this is about listening to your gut. But I definitely think that, they, like I said before, they get the kids to trust them, they try to spend time with them, maybe in a group setting, and then maybe it's more one-on-one. So all of a sudden the neighbor's saying, I'm going to the store to get ice cream, can Johnny come with me? And increasing that one-on-one behavior. And then slowly they'll start doing things, just to sort of test the child and see how that child responds to them. So you need to really be talking to your children and let them know that right away if something doesn't feel right, they need to tell you. And they should be listening to their guts too. Even though they're small, they still can get gut feelings about things. So really open communication.
So there is an appropriate balance between making the kids aware and keeping them informed, really, without scaring them. Then.
Exactly. We don't want to terrify kids and have them walking around being afraid of everyone, but you do need to have some open and honest conversations with your children. One thing that kids should know is that they will never get in trouble for talking to you about something that makes them feel uncomfortable, ever. So that really should be a rule, personally, I think, in everybody's home, that no matter what it is, I will not get mad at you. If something happened that makes you feel uncomfortable, please tell me about it. I really want to know. I think, again, communication is key. Also, an important thing is to explore the difference between secrets versus surprises. These people are allowed to do this because it's done under a veil of secrecy, and they look for kids that will keep those secrets. But if kids are taught from the very beginning that they shouldn't be keeping secrets, it's not okay, that will sort of set the tone for things that come up later in life. They should know the proper names for their body parts. They should also know what parts are absolutely off limits to not only adults but other kids, because we do see a lot of child-on-child abuse, kids reacting sexually because they've been abused. So it's important to tell them that nobody, no adults or other kids, should be touching parts on their body that are private.
Great. Well, that's a lot of great information. This is a good place for us to take a brief break right now. And when we come back, I'll be joined by Jeremy Beth Kusmin, and we're going to be discussing the Family Protection Unit of the District Attorney's Office. So thank you for joining us with the Scales of Justice, and we'll be right back.
We have a big problem, and we need your help.
It's happening on college campuses, at bars, at parties, even in high schools.
It's happening to our sisters and our daughters,
our wives and our friends.
It's called sexual assault, and it has to stop.
We have to stop it. So listen up.
If she doesn't consent, or if she can't consent, it's rape, it's assault.
It's a crime. It's wrong.
If I saw it happening and I was taught you have to do something about it.
If I saw it happening, I speak up.
If I saw it happening, I'd never blame her. I'd help her.
Because I don't want to be a part of the problem.
I want to be a part of the solution.
We need all of you to be part of the solution. This is about respect. It's about responsibility.
It's up to all of us to put an end to sexual assault. And that starts with you.
Because one is too many.
Welcome back to the Scales of Justice. Joining me today is Assistant District Attorney Jeremy Beth Kusmin. Jeremy Beth is the Chief of the Family Protection Unit. She's worked for the Plymouth County DA's office for approximately 12 years. Before the break, we talked about the Children's Advocacy Center and the ways in which we can all be proactive to protect our children, and what you can do if you find out you are in need of the services offered at the Children's Advocacy Center. In this segment, we're going to discuss how my office utilizes the CAC to prosecute criminal cases involving children as victims. Welcome, Jeremy Beth.
Thank you.
Is there a special unit within the Plymouth County DA's office that specializes in crimes that are perpetrated upon the children in our county?
There is. It's the Family Protection Unit. And in this unit, we have approximately 5 to 6 attorneys, including myself, who specialize in the prosecution of any case basically involving a child as a victim. And we also include the prosecution of cyber crimes committed against children, as well as sexting cases. And there's also the Sexually Dangerous Persons Unit housed in that same location. And in this unit, we also have 3 victim witness advocates who serve as the liaison between the case, the attorney assigned to the case, and also the victim and their family. And we work very closely with the local police department, sometimes the state police department, as well as the Department of Children and Families.
Now, even with all your experience, is there a big difference between prosecuting cases that involve children as victims versus adults as victims?
Absolutely. There's a quote, handle with kid gloves. That's exactly what we do. A child, well, first of all, any victim of sexual assault is in need of a lot of hand-holding and support, and that's what we provide. As it relates to children as victims, they need a lot more comforting and a lot more a feeling of security. And the way we do that is I try as often as possible and train the people within our unit to do this. Meet with your child as often as possible to make that child feel as comfortable as possible in the most uncomfortable situation. And usually that means in preparation of trial that we want to bring that child in as often as possible. And I'm going to touch upon that, I think, in the next question a little bit further.
Yeah, because there's some real challenges in the prosecution of cases involving children, small children, sometimes whether or not they may or may not be competent to testify. Sometimes that's an issue. And I think that's what we find, unfortunately, in many cases, is that some of these children who are targeted, who are preyed upon, really are not competent to testify at this time, notwithstanding their best effort and your best efforts in the CAC. So what challenges do you have?
Some of the challenges, I would say, usually are that most of the time, statistically, and what we have seen is that there's usually a delay in the disclosure by the child, and that's oftentimes because they're scared, they've been threatened by the perpetrator, or a variety of other reasons. And because of the delay in the disclosure, oftentimes we have lost crucial evidence, forensic evidence, DNA, and as a result, oftentimes it seems as though our case rests solely on the words of the child, and that's very difficult. And also with the delay, there's also sometimes years and years that go by. There's oftentimes difficulty in remembering small details, as well as finding, for us and the police, finding witnesses that may or may not have seen something or seen a change in the victim, which all help the case when we have that evidence. And what we really try hard to do is not make the child's voice the only possible evidence we have. We look for ways to corroborate, even if there's been a delay in time. And sometimes even just something simple like finding a photograph, having the police go out and find the photograph of the place where the abuse took place years prior, is also helping to corroborate. Or getting, sometimes we're able to get for example, a child's educational record to show that back when the abuse was happening, there was a big drop in their grades and how they were doing. And that also corroborates the victim as well.
So you prepare a little bit differently for a child for trial versus an adult then?
Yes.
And that creates challenges for you. And also, what would you say the most challenging part of your job is?
I would say the most challenging part of the job is the fact that I would say it's a close tie between dealing with not guilty verdicts on a case that you've poured your heart and soul into, or possibly due to lack of evidence or what have you, and the mere fact that sometimes we are just not able to even pursue a perpetrator of children. And that would be a situation where a child is able to disclose maybe to their therapist, and we finally are, we get a report filed from DCF that is making us aware of what's going on, and we're unable to pursue it because it's not in the child's best interest. Sometimes a child is not psychologically ready to deal with it, and we would do more harm than good. So having to temporarily close out a file that we can't pursue a child rapist is very, very challenging. And it's a close tie between, the occasional, hopefully it's occasional not guilty you get. And we don't blame the jurors for that. Sometimes they want more, and unfortunately we can only put in front of them what we have, and that's just really, really difficult.
And you also, with challenges in these cases, and with dealing with these small kids and developing relationships with them over the course of time when you're preparing the case, what's the most rewarding part?
The most rewarding part is, I would say, forming a relationship with a child victim, and sometimes realizing that you might be the one person in their life that truly believes them and supports them, and you might be the one person that has legitimately changed their lives for the better.
You're their voice, and I think that's a real big thing with dealing with child victims, is that they need a voice, they need someone that they can lean on, somebody that can support them, somebody that does believe in them, and that makes a huge difference in those cases. If the viewers are looking for further guidance, they want to learn more, what should they do regarding the CAC?
Well, the CAC, or the Children's Advocacy Center, accepts calls during normal business hours, which are from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. The voicemail at the Children's Advocacy Center is confidential, so any detailed messages can be left, and a staff member of the CAC will get back to those people. They could also always call the Department of Children and Family Services for guidance as well. And obviously, if there's an emergency, they could always call 911.
And does the Children's Advocacy Center conduct trainings?
We do. We conduct community trainings for schools, mental health agencies, police departments, pediatrician offices, and any other agency that's interested. So they could call the CAC. They could call the CAC if they would like us to come out and train your staff regarding reporting, recognizing, and responding to child abuse.
Okay. Well, that's great information to have. I want to thank you, and I also want to thank Nicole, who joined us today, regarding these really important issues here in our county about the kids who rely so much on you and your staff and what you do and how the job that you do every day to make their lives a little bit better. I want to thank you on behalf of them and behalf of the rest of the citizens of Plymouth County.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes this episode of the Scales of Justice. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like more information regarding the Children's Advocacy Center, please visit our website. You can access it at mass.gov/DA/Plymouth/CAC. So thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Scales of Justice.